Hey there, fellow resistors. Charlie Angus here, the MeidasCanada network. Today, we're going to share a video that we shot with our sister network, MeidasTouch, in the U.S. Ben Meiselas and I sat down to talk about the bizarre news that came out that Donald Trump is setting up a military base for the Qataris in Idaho. We talk about it from the Canadian perspective that, Canada used to be America's closest ally. We were so involved in security, in intelligence sharing, and how this is a nation that is getting harder and harder to trust at every level because we're seeing the breakdown of the rule of law. We've actually now see that the United States wants to change laws so that they can have their domestic security operate on our side of the border. Hell no. When we see that they're using, that they're shooting at priests in American cities with pepper balls, that they're and using live ammunition against other people, this is not a government that's under the rule of law anymore. So Canada cannot go down that road. We cannot turn our border over. These are all things that are very concerning as we see Trump doing these bizarre things like saying to the Qataris, hey, thanks for the 747 jet you gave me as a private gift. Now, how about setting up a military base in Idaho? The other really disturbing news that came out, but it shouldn't be surprising at all, is that Trump's wife announced, hey, she's been running back channels with Vladimir Putin. Indicted war criminal, a guy who's continually undermining Ukraine, undermining European security. But is that all that surprising? The Trump connections to Russia have been there all along. It's just that nobody seems to want to say it. Even though, we had the Christopher Steele dossier in 2016. This was a damning indictment. Christopher Steele was the go-to person at MI6 in terms of the Russia desk. The FBI used to use his intel all the time, but suddenly when he came out with this damning indictment of Donald Trump, everybody were bending themselves backwards to figure out why they couldn't trust the dossier, why it wasn't, credible. Donald Trump couldn't really be a Russian agent, could he? No, of course not. Well, how about, of course, yes. Before we get into the interview with Ben, I just want to read to you a passage from The Road to On Freedom by Timothy Snyder. My God, this book is mind-blowing. Timothy Snyder, the great expert on fascism, who was one of 3 top professors in the United States to leave the United States because of the threat of fascism. He's now at the University of Toronto here. And he talks about Donald Trump not as this just a narcissistic slug character, but as a construct of the KGB, FSB, and Vladimir Putin and oligarch money. He says, from a Russian perspective, Trump was a failure who was rescued and became an asset to be used to wreak havoc in American reality. The relationship was play-acted in Moscow at the Miss Universe pageant in 2013, where Trump preened before Putin, hoping that the Russian president would be his, quote, best friend. Trump's Russian partners knew he needed money. They paid him $20 million while they organized the pageant. They allowed him to play his role as the American with money and power. And in a music video filmed for the occasion, Trump was permitted to say, "You're fired," to a successful young pop star, the son of the man who actually ran the pageant. Letting Trump win meant owning him completely. And then Snyder ends with this. Trump, as a winner, was a fiction that would make his country lose. He was a fiction created with Russian oligarch money. We're going to talk about that in later episodes. It's a lot of the research I'm doing right now. But anyways, let's get to this interview with Ben Meiselas. It's, Ben and I talk about a lot of stuff. We have sister networks. The Qatari thing is just so bizarre. It just needs us to do a deeper dive. So check it out.
Are absolutely furious, as always, at Donald Trump and his regime. Earlier this week, of course, you had that disastrous Oval Office appearance where Donald Trump continued to threaten the sovereignty of Canada. He attacked the Canadian auto industry, and I just thought Donald Trump's overall behavior was abysmal. And of course, Prime Minister Carney was there in the Oval Office. Then at the end of the week, we learned that the United States military is helping to build a Qatari Emiri Air Force facility in Idaho, which obviously borders Canada. So I'm just trying to get this straight as the Trump regime has pushed Canada far away from the normal coordination on intelligence as the Trump regime threatens Canadian sovereignty. Now a military base of a Middle Eastern country is going to be built in an area near the border of Canada. I'm not even sure this is even of precedent in the United States to allow any foreign country to build military bases in the United States, yet alone the country of Qatar having the Qatari. Like there's a Canadian military base. There's joint operations, but we don't give military bases to countries. Yet alone, Donald Trump got the 747 jet from Qatar, and now they just get military bases in our country. Just to remind you, this is what went down when Hegseth, who unlawfully refers to himself as the Secretary of War, was with the head of Qatar. Here, play this clip.
No one other than President Trump could have achieved the peace that we believe will be a lasting peace in Gaza. And Qatar played a substantial role from the beginning, working with our folks to ensure that came about. So I want to thank you for that historic peace. We look forward to joining the president as that gets, it's already been delivered, but as that's formally signed as well. And I'm also proud that today we're announcing, we're signing a letter of acceptance to build a Qatari Emiri Air Force facility at the Mountain Home Air Base in Idaho. The location will be host a contingent of Qatari F-15s and pilots to enhance our combined training, increase lethality, interoperability. It's just another example of our partnership. And I hope you know, Your Excellency, that you can count on us.
Then next you had Melania Trump bragging that she had open channel communications with Vladimir Putin. Apparently there are open channel communications that are taking place. And also Putin sent over his diplomats to the United States to talk about trade deals with MAGA Republican Congress members. We're not talking about sanctions. We're talking about doing trade with the United States. But here's what Melania Trump said, just a reminder. Play this clip.
President Putin and I have had an open channel of communication regarding the welfare of these children. For the past 3 months, both sides have participated in several back-channel meetings and calls, all in good faith. We have agreed to cooperate with each other for the benefit of all people involved in this war.
And then when Donald Trump was with Prime Minister Carney earlier this week, in addition to bragging or threatening the sovereignty of Canada, once again attacking Canada's auto industry, and then saying that people of Canada love the United States and don't worry, they'll be traveling back to the United States soon. Donald Trump also claims he saved 100,000 Canadian lives, he says, by blowing up Venezuelan fishing boats. And apparently we've learned also he blew up a Colombian shipping boat of people who are not narco-terrorists. And in any event, all of the blowing up of shipping boats seems to be a violation of international law. But here's what he said with Carney. Let's play it.
Zero. And as you know, we've taken a very hard stand on drugs. This is also benefiting you. We've a lot of we call them the water drugs, the drugs that come in through water. They're not coming. There are no boats anymore. Frankly, there are no fishing boats. There's no boats out there, period. If you want to know the truth, we're saying, does anybody go fishing anymore? The fact is we knocked out, probably saved at least 100,000 lives, American lives, Canadian lives, by taking out all those boats coming in. So it's, and now they don't come in that way anymore. Now they'll come in other ways, and we're not going to allow that either. So we've done a great job on that, but.
So now let me bring in leader of MeidasCanada, leader of the Resistance Tour, former member of Parliament, Charlie Angus. Hey, Charlie, you heard there. Donald Trump is also saying that he saved all of these Canadian lives, which is a lie. But there were other parts there as well where he says Canadians love us. They're all going to keep coming back. They will absolutely love us again. So what are you seeing in Canada right now, Charlie?
I don't think anybody in Canada expected that we were going to get a deal with this gangster, but people are beyond fed up. The fact that once again he interrupts the prime minister. The prime minister is trying to be nice to him to, brag about us becoming part of the United States, destroying our sovereignty, threatening our auto sector, our manufacturing belt, saying that we're going to like going back. We are not going back. People are more firm than ever. I hear from people all the time. People are not only angry and determined not to buy products, but they're going into the stores and calling out the managers and saying, we don't even want to see these products on our shelves. That's how deep the anger is right now. But I think what's really concerning in the broader picture is that, in addition to being America's #1 trading partner, we've also been one of their closest, maybe their closest defense partner, because we're on the border. We've been with them in NORAD. We've been with them in the Five Eyes. Trump, they've talked about kicking us out of the Five Eyes network. We were one of their main security partners on this. They wanted to kick us out. Why? Because, we exposed Russian interference in the election as part of the intelligence sharing. They've talked about kicking us out of NORAD, which would leave North America defenseless. They see us very much as an adversary, a threat, a country to be pushed around. And yet now we find out that they're going to put a Qatari base in Idaho on our border. This is just not a regime that can be trusted.
Right. There are national security implications in the United States, but also as our neighbor in Canada to say, so Trump's going to put military bases of Middle East countries on our border or right there. That's one point of it. And the other point, which you say is, so you prefer Qatar and engaging in relations there over your long trusted partner, to the north. I mean, again, you look at the Qatari GDP, you're talking about it's not nothing, but it's a relatively negligible GDP, annually in the low billions, versus Canada, $4 trillion and fought side by side with the United States against fascists war after war. But Trump likes the Qatari gold and the 747 jets. It sends a disturbing message.
Well, I think what the message that it's sending is that as a former ally and as now a potential adversarial neighbor, they can't be trusted. They can't be trusted with intel. They can't be trusted in terms of coordination. For training, if they wanted to train Qatari pilots, the U.S. has a long history of that. Canada has a long history of that. Canada and the U.S. have long histories of training together, out doing naval exercises. If the Americans want to come up into the Arctic to train, we work with them. If we were going to get training in some area on defense, these are common things that you have between nations. What you don't have is giving a foreign nation a military base on your soil. What kind of message is that sending? But, this isn't the first time Canadian intelligence and Canadian military have had to really question where we're going with the United States. Remember when Donald Trump was first elected, the first time he fired James Comey, and all that's coming back to bite us. Right after firing Comey, he went into the White House and met with Sergei Lavrov, who's a very militant ally of Putin, and he turned over information on an Israeli agent who was working within Syria. I mean, he gave serious intel to the Russians. This stuff's staring us in the face. This guy has given stuff to Russia again and again and again. He can't be trusted militarily. He can't be trusted with intelligence. And then we have like Pete Hegseth. I mean, my God. If Pete Hegseth was elevated in the Canadian Navy, I think he'd end up with one of those sock and a soap accidents because this guy is completely unfit for the job. So Canadians are watching this and thinking, this is a nation that we used to work very closely with in terms of trade, very closely with intelligence, very closely with military. We can't trust them on any front. And we're going to have to start really, really rethinking our own defense in light of this.
It seemed that Prime Minister Carney was doing what he could try to do to be cordial and create some semblance of normalcy, especially as the United States, Canada, Mexico agreements are re-up for negotiations. Like I at one level, I understand he's an affable, like he's like a nice guy in general. Like that's how he is. But even when he's there and Trump behaves that way, I think it's going to get tougher and tougher for him to be that way, especially I think on his right flank when you see like the Premier of Ontario, channeling more of even an elbows up movement saying, I get it. You want to try to do this, do it. But at some point you got to hit back because you can't treat Trump like this. And so it was an interesting dynamic because I got some pushback from followers saying, Ben, you understand who Ford. I do. I totally get it. But the point I'm trying to make is you can't keep doing these Oval Office visits where Trump disrespect. That was the point I was trying to make.
No, I think you're right on. I think the prime minister came back. He needed to get a win because people are questioning being nice to Trump. People have said again and again they're willing to take economic hits. We see the polling showing we're willing to take serious economic hits to stand up for our sovereignty. So when the prime minister is doing the low-key, the traditional Canadian way of like, okay, being nice to the drunk at the party so he doesn't do something stupid. But he's running out of room on that. And, Doug Ford and me and Doug Ford, we don't agree on very much. But he's channeling that anger that's out there that I'm hearing at the coffee shops where people are like, the hell with this. This is people get it. This guy's a gangster. He's pushing us around. He keeps expecting every time you're nice to him, they take ground from us. So we've got a situation where I think our prime minister is going to have to start pushing back harder. People do not want to go along any further right now when we see the United States is actually talking about changing laws. So they think that American police and American security should be able to operate on the Canadian side of the border. Well, hell with that. We're watching them attacking their own citizens in the cities, unarmed citizens. You think we're going to let them come over the border? So the prime minister is going to have to start taking a much harder line. In terms of intelligence, I can't say, but some of the military folks I've spoken with are seriously rethinking the trust that we had, seriously rethinking where we're going to put our investments, and seriously having to rethink what kind of intel are we going to be sharing with a country that's willing to, hey, you give us a jet or 747, we'll let you set up military bases in our country. If America's open for business like that with countries like Qatar, what's next? So Canada has to really rethink its role as neighbor, as trading partner, and traditionally as ally.
Charlie, before we go, we know that Donald Trump and his regime watch this. We know that the ambassador to Canada watches this. He sent you letters letting us know that he watches this and watches you. What's your message right now to the Trump regime?
Well, Donald, your latest behavior, was it planned to just really, really piss us off, to really push us further? What was once your best neighbor, your best friend? Well, we aren't friends anymore. We get that. The fact that you sent Pete Hoekstra, and we know that Meidas lives in Pete Hoekstra's head. He seems to be obsessed with this. Well, Pete, the day's coming when people are going to start demanding you get given the bum's rush because you're just a provocateur. But what's happening now, I think, in terms of Donald Trump attacking citizens in his own country, attacking cities, and then turning American soil over to foreign military bases, I think ordinary Americans have gone along up to this point of recognizing this is way, way beyond the safe zone. So for Canadians, we're going to do what we've got to do. This elbows up movement's not stopping. The boycott is getting stronger. It's going to start putting increasing pressure on our government leaders who are now trying to feel if there's an opportunity to work with you. It ain't going to happen, Donald. We get it. People get it. Ordinary people get it. So you're boxing yourself in further and further. So do what you're going to do, Donald, but explain to American people why, like, who's next? Who else you're going to give military bases to? When's Vladimir Putin getting his rocket bases in the United States, maybe just outside of Washington? I mean, come on, anything's open with you for sale right now, including your country, including your dignity, including the soul of your people. We're not going to be sold down the river, not by you, not now, not ever.
I think if you were to poll American people or the world, who do you think Donald Trump supports more, U.S. or Russia? I think overwhelmingly you would see, Russia is based on how Donald Trump's behavior is. Then I also think that if you poll Donald Trump and his MAGA base, and said, who would they rather be aligned with? I think that they're so MAGA mush brained out that they're buying into the Trump Putin, dynamic right now. Anyway, you and I will talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's horrific. You and I will talk more about that, but everybody go to MeidasCanada on YouTube. It's where you'll hear more of these discussions every single day from Charlie Angus. Let's get MeidasCanada to 200,000 subscribers this weekend. Thanks. Appreciate you, Charlie.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much for tuning in to the program today. We really count on your support. So hit subscribe. Help us to get to 200,000 subscribers on the MeidasCanada network. If you like the work and the thoughts that I'm bringing forward, you could support Charlie Angus Resistance Substack, where I do a deeper dive into a lot of the issues. And we're going to be on the road a lot with the MeidasCanada town halls. If you want to help out at all, because we're a very small team and it's expensive getting out there. We have to be able to put teams on the ground, and we have to figure out how to travel across the huge distances of this country. So you could consider a contribution if you want. info@charlieangus.ca. So from the wild country of northern Canada, I want to thank you and say, hey, we're going to keep kicking at that darkness until it bleeds daylight. And the dog supports us as well. Take care.